guys, it's Sam, and this is my spoiler-free review of The Silvered Serpents by Roshani Chokshi. This is the second book in the Gilded Wolves trilogy. I will leave my review for the first book on the screen if you have not read that one yet. Because although this review is spoiler-free for this book, there might be potential hintings of things from the first book. So this book takes off a few months after the events of the first book, so things are definitely tonally different in this book. In the first book, it was a lot of like the heist stuff and the crew and things, and they suffered a huge blow at the end of the last book, and so everyone is really reeling from that, particularly Severin. So the book starts off with everyone being kind of separate and distant and not as together as they were in book one, and kind of recovering from that because they are on a mission again together for a new artifact that might change their fates, etc. So first off, we talk about the world building. I will say the world building in this one was not quite as fun and lush as it was in the first book. In the first book, the setting is much more of Paris, and then there's a lot of like mythology stuff with all the houses, which I loved. This book focuses much more on the Fallen House stuff, which is cool, but it is just not as like lush and rich and so many different settings as the first book. It is really kind of one setting, and we see a lot of that, and I did miss some of that like fun and extravagance, I guess you could say, of the first book. It's not that this didn't have any of that in there. There's definitely still that magicalness and everything, but it's just much more isolated to one place. There is a lot of like ice stuff and ice magic and just like general oddness and creepiness in the like world building and the aesthetic of this one, but again, just wasn't one that I loved as much as the first one, but it's still really great. Like, this is just in comparison to the first book, like as an aesthetic book, this is still really much better than a lot of other books that I've read. So next we talk about the characters. This book really made me be in love with every single character, which I loved all the characters in the first book, don't get me wrong, but I definitely had favorites. Now I don't really know who my favorites are. I feel like with Severin, a lot of stuff that he does in here, like he's going through a lot, and so maybe he's like a little bit lower on like my ranking than the rest of them, but everybody I'm just like, I love you all so much. Like, you just get so much more of all of them, all their personalities, and everyone, I think that's the interesting part of it. And in this book, everyone's like really struggling with something. So you really get to see like the darker sides of their personalities in a lot of ways. So I just love all of them so much. These are my little nerd thieves trying their best. Like I mentioned, since everyone is going through things, everything is pain in here. Is this the angstiest book I've ever read? No, but it's up there. It is pretty high up there. There's a lot of just angsty things happening with all of them, particularly Severin and Layla, who were angst central in book one, or even more so in this book. Like, just Severin in this book doesn't want to have feelings. He wants to bottle all his feelings up until he dies, and that is just resulting in a lot of angst for everyone around him, and different relationship things and different friendships and how they're just all relating to each other is just very, very painful in a good way. There were a couple character dynamics that I expected to go a little bit differently than they did, so I wouldn't say that's necessarily a bad thing. It just wasn't what I was expecting necessarily. Then the one thing that I will say about the characters that I found a little bit like is that I found the villains in this one to be more predictable. I sort of like saw it coming a little bit, and I just didn't like that quite as much. Some of the like antagonist part in this book was not as strong, I feel, as it was in the first book. As far as the plot, this was still very fast-paced and compelling and interesting. The one thing that sucked for me, because I was reading the arc, is there was not any of the images that you get as far as like the puzzles and what they're figuring out. It's still explained in text, but I would have loved to have seen that, which is just a me thing. It won't affect you reading the final copy. Like, it was just a me thing for the like pacing as like an arc thing. But that still like didn't take away from the overall enjoyment of the story, and especially at the end, like both of these books in this series, towards the end there's like this countdown thing going on to something big happening, and so you just have that suspense in the last like 30% of the book. You're just like, like you just know it's coming and what is happening, and it's mixed POV, so you're getting all these different perspectives of all this stuff happening, and so just the ending is always like spectacular, but the whole book really is, and I just am very interested in what's going to happen next, and I don't really have any theories or anything like that about what's going to happen next. So overall, I really love this. Not quite as much as the Gilded Wolves, but really, really close. And I would say that I give this a 4.5 to 4.75 stars. Not quite a 5-star, but very close. I am going to be doing a spoilery gush on this book, so if you read this book and you want to talk about it more with me and spoilers and everything, I will link that on the screen. So comment below, let me know your thoughts on the Silvered Serpents. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye.